I figured out a unique and novel way to rate the new Metallica album. Because, after all, what would it mean if I gave this album a 7 or an 8 versus some other reviewer giving it a 9 or a 5? What do those numbers even mean when you think about where I'm coming from versus where they're coming from? So I figured out a thought experiment that would more properly rate the album. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, John Barbas, and it is here. We finally got a new Metallica album, and I've very much been looking forward to reviewing this one for you. And remember, at the end of the episode, I've got a unique way to rate it that I don't think anybody else is doing. So before we do that, let's break down some of it. Let's go with my overall general thoughts, talk about the songs I love and the songs that I hate, and why that matters for the thought experiment at the end. In general, for the album, I think it's good-ish. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece. I wouldn't say that it stands up there with their Titanic albums like And Justice for All and Master of Puppets, but there's a lot to like here, some things not to like, and there's some takeaways here that I think are very instructive. So let's not be negative Nancy's. First, let's talk about the things that I really do love about this album. First and foremost, the riffs. There are some outstanding riffs on this one. And there's some songs that I really don't like for a particular reason or another. I'll get into that in a minute. But even those songs, there's riffs on there. I'm like, well, that part's awesome. More of that, please. Also, the vocals, the vocal harmonies in particular. There's a lot of great layering of the vocals in the studio done that create this very unique vibe. Some of it, I say unique, some of it is kind of reminiscent of what they did on Load, but hey, I like that. Yes, I'm that weird Metallica fan that likes Load. I love Load. That's one of my favorite albums, in rock and roll. Definitely not my favorite Metallica album, but it's one of the greatest rock and roll albums I've ever heard. I stand by that. The Outlaw Torn is one of my favorite songs ever written. There's a lot of great bangers on there like that. And this album, 72 Seasons, very much reminds me of Load in that there's a lot of groovy pentatonic blues bass riffs in here. And like I said, those vocal harmonies. There are certain songs where they do those vocal layering techniques in the studio that gives it that evil, eerie kind of vibe that just wasn't present on the earlier Metallica albums. And honestly, I think this is better. Those first few Metallica albums aren't exactly known for having the best vocals. I also think it's pretty cool that this is, not technically, but kind of a concept album. We haven't really gotten a concept album from Metallica unless you count And Justice for All, which is, again, not really a concept album. It's just got like a loose theme. And, 72 Seasons is kind of like that. It's about, as the title suggests, the first 72 seasons of life, which is your first 18 years and how formative that is. And can you overcome the way that your foundation is laid in those years? I think it's a pretty powerful message. I like the lyrical content on this, save for a couple of songs where there's a couple of lines that are kind of cringe to me. Overall, the overall message I think is pretty cool, and I look forward to one day doing a Philosophy of Metallica episode on this album. And before we get to the negative parts of the album, we have to talk about Lars's drumming. My whole career as a musician, I've heard people bag on Lars's drumming, and I don't agree. Is he the best drummer ever in metal? No, of course not. But who is? That's by definition a title that only one person can hold, if it wasn't subjective. But what would Metallica sound like if Mike Portnoy was the drummer for Metallica? What would they sound like if Mario Duplanter was the drummer? What would it sound like if Joey Jordison or somebody was the drummer? It wouldn't sound right to me. I don't want virtuoso drumming. I just want a groovy pocket. And I really like what Lars did on 72 Seasons. I've never really sung the praises of his drumming either, but I I like what he did here. He sat back and maintained a groovy pocket. And this is a pretty groovy album. Like I said, it's got that load, bluesy groove sort of stuff to it. And it's also got a little bit of Black Sabbath in it, which I really love the Black Sabbath riffs in this. We'll get to that in a minute when we go song by song. But Lars keeps the pocket. He sits back a little bit in the mix. Maybe that was a production decision. I don't know, but I like it. Let me be the guy to give props to Lars. I'll be that contrarian. That's my hot take. Lars's drumming on 72 Seasons is suitable. It's what the songs need. Has Lars said a bunch of stuff that, merits some of the online criticism he gets? Sure. He's been a rich rock star for many decades now. Of course, he's going to say some shit that's a little, out of touch or whatever, but he's a rock star. I mean, it's okay. I don't really care what he says. I care that the drums maintain a good, groovy pocket. Now, unfortunately, it's not all praise. There is definitely some issues that I have with this album that makes it, something to complain about. Let's talk about those now. First of all, this album is long, and that's because all of the individual songs are long. And there's really two components to that I want to talk about. First, let's talk about the intros. Almost every song has a long, drawn-out intro. Metallica on this one really likes to start the riff basic and then build it up to the main riff, and it can often be, over a minute, sometimes 2 minutes or more before the actual song starts. Is that really necessary? I don't think it is. They could have really shrunk down the runtime of some of these songs. I'm not saying it needs to be a 3-minute radio-friendly song. My favorite album is And Justice for All. All of those songs are long too. They're long for a reason. These seem long just to be long. I mean, Inamorata is 11 minutes. Now, I really like that song, and we're going to get into why in a minute, but it doesn't need to be 11 minutes. It's not Bohemian Rhapsody. It's not this giant sweeping epic with multiple movements. It's got verses and choruses just like any other song. Really doesn't need to be 11 minutes. A lot of these songs don't need to be as long as they were, and maybe one or two of them could have been cut. Now, I will say, maybe there is one reason why the intros are so long. Maybe it's because of the place that Metallica's at. Think about Metallica. They haven't played a venue smaller than an arena in several decades now. I'm sure they've played a club gig here or there, but it's not routine that they play to clubs. It's more as like a novelty that they've done. But for the most part, they are now an arena act, and as far back as they can remember, they've been playing arenas. And I wonder if they write these long building intros with the arena in mind. When I'm sitting at home listening to it, I kind of like, yeah, okay, get to it. But in the arena, yeah, I could see that build being kind of epic in the arena, especially with the light show and the pyrotechnics and, James as a frontman getting everybody hype. Yeah, I could see where some of these songs having that long build could be fun in a live setting. It just, you can do that live and not do it on the record. And that's a major point that I want to make later with one of my other criticisms. Kirk's guitar solos. They're not good. I'm really disappointed with Kirk's guitar solos on this one. And there's a couple of reasons for it. And he has heard some of the criticism and has rebutted them in the media. I want to address some of his arguments. But I also think his solos, there's too many of them. And that's another reason why the songs are so long. First up, what is my problem with Kirk's solos? Well, I got to tell you, Kirk Hammett is one of the reasons why I started playing guitar. When I got into Metallica as a kid, I was blown away by Kirk Hammett. I wanted to play guitar like that. He's been a major influence on me, easily top 5 guitar influence on me. I've always admired his playing, especially in the 90s. Now, I know the 90s is when a lot of Metallica fans fell off from Metallica with the Black Album and more so with Load, but to me, that's Kirk's best guitar work. Obviously, I love the epic solos on like Master of Puppets, and we've already gone over my love of And Justice for All, but man, on Load, Kirk was creative. He composed unique and fresh guitar work that fit the sound of the song. Maybe Hero of the Day isn't your favorite Metallica song. It's not mine either. I really like it probably more than most of you. But listen to that guitar solo. That is a unique guitar solo. No other guitar solo sounds like that, and it fits that song so well. Even the shreddy songs, like the solo on Fuel, it fits that song so well. It's so well composed. None of the solos on 72 Seasons are well composed. And we've already gone over how good some of these riffs are, and I feel that they deserve better than just show up in the studio and just kind of wing it. I want the guitar solo to sound cool over the song. I want it to provide lift to the song, to be something that I look forward to in the song. And up until recently, Kirk was a master at that. But on 72 Seasons in particular, I don't look forward to any of these solos. Only two of them, to me, provide lift to the song. All the other solos on this album is just kind of like, yep, it's a guitar solo. This is the part where Kirk plays what Kirk plays. Double stops followed by a pentatonic fast lick, more double stops, soak it in wah, repeat. All right, Kirk, here's the first few songs on 72 Seasons. Let's get some of these solos down. What have you brought? Oh, I brought a couple of ideas, couple of ideas. You did your homework, right? Yeah, dude, totally. Just play it, you'll see. All right, let's do this first take on this first solo. All right, you want to do another take? Nah, dude, that one was good. You don't want to do another take? Nah, let's do the next one. Okay, well, all right. Here's the take one on the next solo. Did you just play the same solo in a different position? Nah, dude, that one was an E, this one's an A, so up here is where I'm playing. James, what do you think? Yeah! And that's where I want to get to Kirk's arguments about it and push back on those arguments a little bit. So Kirk said, yeah, I've got people down the street from me that could probably play more technical solos, but I'm not interested in sweeping because sweeping sounds like it's awesome, but it's really not that hard to do. And look, I don't want Kirk to come in there and sweep like Michelangelo Badio either. I agree with Kirk on that one. But then he says it's really about serving the song, and that's where I disagree. You didn't serve the song. You just improvised the pentatonic scale. I could skip the solos on every song on this album and be happy. I like the Lux Eterna solo, and I like the Inamorata solo, and that's it. And why do I like those two solos? Well, Lux Eterna is just a high-octane rock and roll song. So yeah, a high-octane, fast, pentatonic, blazing, whammy bar sort of solo actually does fit that song. And Inamorata is more of a ballady type, mid-tempo song. So Kirk plays more passionate with his blues licks, and it fits a bit better. But all of the other fast, metal songs, it's just there. And if it's just there, then it doesn't really need to be there. You could cut it, and then the song would be shorter and arguably better. And I really hate to say what I'm about to say, but I kind of think that James and Lars should have gave Kirk the Saint Anger treatment on this album.
But can I say something that I think is bullshit? This whole fucking solo out, dates the whole thing. That's so bullshit. If you don't put a guitar solo in one of these songs, that dates it to this period, and that cements it to a trend that's happening in music right now.
I was so pissed off when Saint Anger came out and there was zero guitar solos. As I said, Kirk Hammett is a hero of mine. And I was like, how dare they tell him he can't solo? What are they trying to be, a new metal band? This is bullshit. On the same vein where I think it's bullshit that you say no solos, it's also kind of bullshit that every song has to have a guitar solo. It doesn't. Now, you remember the point that I made leading up to this whole Kirk's guitar solos are bad tirade that I've gone on? You can do something on the record and play it different live. Remember that? Well, that's my last criticism of Kirk. One of the other things that he said in interviews leading up to this was he's tired of playing the Master of Puppets solo note for note live. And I get that. That song is 30 years old now, right? 40 years old, something like that. I can get it. You're touring the world every year, night in, night out, playing that solo note for note every night. I get it. Maybe it's boring. So he said he wrote these like improv style so that he can improv live. Well, I hate that. Once again, you can do something on the record and then play it differently live. I mean, that is a long-standing tradition in rock and roll. It's one of the reasons why bootlegs of live shows exist. I remember back in the day, Metallica used to sell FLACs and MP3s of their live concerts, and some of those were really cool because I remember seeing them live in Pensacola. And y'all, at that concert, Kirk sang one of the voices on Seek and Destroy. How cool is that? That's not something that would ever happen on the record. But live, when I saw Kirk as singing one of the verses, I was like, holy shit, this is cool. And it would have been cool to own a copy of that. Now, it's a live recording. That's the tradition in rock and roll. You have bootlegs of live albums, and the solos are more improv and are played different. And maybe they extend the song a little bit. Back to my earlier point, they jam it out a little bit more, and it's more free and loose in the live setting. You can do that. These songs deserve a well-composed guitar solo, and that doesn't mean you have to play it that way live. You could improv it live, and I'll make one last point on this. The reason why fans like for you to play Master of Puppets note for note live is because that solo is so well composed. We love that guitar solo. All right, so that's my general thoughts, the pros and the cons. Cut to the chase, John. Like, you've been teasing us about this rating system. What is it? Okay. Like I said, numerically rating it is inadequate. But I was thinking about last week's episode of the podcast where I reviewed a guitar. And I gave, certain aspects an A+ and certain aspects, a B-. That's the way I rated it. But at the end of the episode, I said, what would truly tell you if I like this guitar or not? Because I can pick up any guitar and just be like, this is awesome. And it is awesome. Guitars are awesome. Metal is awesome. So what I said about that guitar was what would really tell you if I like it or not is, would I buy another one? If I was to say to you, yeah, next time I'm buying a guitar, I'm buying a Jericho. That lets you know that guitar rules. Well, how can we take that same concept to an album of music? I'm obviously not going to buy it again. So here's my rating. Would I put any of these songs on a playlist? Let's say you're like me and you and your brother go on adventures all the time, these outdoor adventures. Me and him are going on a road trip to Colorado, and we're going to hike up the mountains in Colorado. It's a 24-hour road trip. We're going to make some playlists. And of course, it being me and my brother, it's going to be metal. And maybe we're going to make several metal playlists, and one of them might be a Metallica playlist. What's going on that playlist? Well, obviously, 1, Master of Puppets, Battery, Fight Fire with Fire, Outlaw Torn, The Unnamed Feeling. There's all these great Metallica songs that are going to go on the playlist. Too Far Gone is definitely going on that playlist. And Sleepwalk My Wife Away, going on the playlist. The album's pretty good. There's songs on here that are going to go on my Metallica playlist. And if I'm listening to somebody else's stuff, and, there's a bunch of on there, maybe there's a bunch of butt rock on there or whatever, and then Inamorata comes on or Lux Eterna comes on, and be like, yeah, turn that one up. If I'm in the car with my wife and Shadows Follow comes on, or her radio's, her playlist or whatever, her Bluetooth, whatever, I'm going to be like, yeah, and I'm going to turn it up. If Too Far Gone comes on, not only am I going to turn it up, but I'm going to be like, shh, wait till this song's over. That's how good the song is. That's the rating. All this, it's not as good as it was in the 80s. It's not thrash metal, man. Metallica sold out, blah, blah, blah. You've heard all of that before. It's not helping you any. But I feel like this is the true test. Would you put some of these songs on your playlist? I would. So therefore, I can only give 72 Seasons a mostly good review. Is it a masterpiece? Is it an A+? Absolutely not. Is it their worst album that I won't be putting any of the songs on my playlist? Nope. That's kind of where the disappointment lies, isn't it? We don't want pretty good from Metallica. But that's what it is. It's pretty good. That's what we got. That's life. There we go. Let me know what you think. Which songs do you like? Do you want me to do a philosophy of Metallica on this one? Should I skip the queue because I still haven't done the Black Album, still haven't done Load, Reload, Saint Anger, etc.? Should I just keep going in order the way I have been and eventually finish the playlist? Or do you want me to do this one now because it's fresh and because it's hot? Definitely not doing it next week because, I can't be doing Metallica every week. This isn't a Metallica channel. Done a lot of Metallica content lately, It's Metallica. They got a new album out. Got to cover it. But if you haven't caught up with the philosophy of Metallica, you can just click right here. There's the playlist of the ones I've done so far. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.